So I wonder if there's anyone in the room today, anyone at all, who in the last week, in meetings that you may have had in business or perhaps in a community, has not heard the word innovation. Anybody? Right? Like zero, right? Like we hear it every day. We hear it 6 times a day. And yet, sometimes we get stuck. So why is that? Why would we be so focused on something for years now and still not really be able to achieve what we're talking about? Well, I'm often asked as I go around the world working with companies, you know, what's actually going on? And what I see more than anything else is rooms full of people like that, rooms full of really smart people. Sometimes they're doctors, sometimes they're engineers, sometimes they're social workers, sometimes they're policymakers. Rooms full of really smart people, passionate people, dedicated people, working their butts off on the wrong stuff. And I see some heads nodding, because you know what I mean. And what's even more ironic is that half of them know it. They're working on the wrong stuff, and they're no. So why is that? Is it because the will isn't there? No. Is it because the need isn't there? No. Is it because the intelligence isn't there? No. It's because people tend to ask themselves the wrong questions. And if you ask yourself the wrong question, it doesn't matter how good the rest of your work is. Great answer, wrong question. So why is that? Well, what I see often is that the more expert the individuals are, the better doctors they are, the better engineers they are, the more learning they have, the more reputation they have, is that they tend to ask questions that they already know the answers to. Right? So why would you do that? Because it's only going to take you where you already know. It's really, really hard to ask questions that you don't know the answers to. But that's where the magic is. That's when we start exploring things in a totally, totally different way. Because it's absolutely true that the safe path is the one you already know. But it also leads you to where you've already been. So why would we do that? So one of the things I try to get people to do is I try to get them to ask those tough questions. Ask questions that you don't know the answers to. And here's what happens. The question that has no answer, it's kind of like launching a Hubble telescope into space. What it does is it leads to possibility. It leads to the discovery of the new. And when that happens, things open up. When that happens, the shock of the possible becomes real. And when that happens, we really begin to understand for the first time that the future is not the present part 2. It ain't going to work that way. It's going to require absolutely radical, fundamental change. It's going to require, in the words of a, interestingly, 6th century BC philosopher, an unexpected connection. Heraclitus said in the 6th century BC that an unexpected connection is more powerful than one that's obvious. The unexpected connection, it's the heart of all creativity. It's the heart of all productive thinking. It's that absolutely incredible aha that you get when you make those unexpected connections. Archimedes is sitting in his bathtub, and he's been given the task, as you know, of measuring the amount of gold in the king's crown, and it's an unusual shape, it's an odd shape, and nobody's ever been able to do this before. He's sitting in the bathtub, and as he does, the water is going up and down, and he looks at the water, and he suddenly makes the unexpected connection between the displacement of his body in the water and a way to measure the gold content in the king's crown. And he jumps out of the bathtub, Eureka, I found it. An unexpected connection. Boom! The world changes. Thomas Edison is sitting in his Menlo Park lab, and he observes a glass of water vibrating because of some activity. And he knows that vibration and sound are the same thing. This guy's been working on sound for 3 or 4 years now, trying to figure out, how do I capture, how do I record sound? And this glass starts vibrating, and the water in the glass starts rippling. And suddenly, you remember that scene from Jurassic Park, you know, with the Tyrannosaurus? Exactly the same thing. It starts rippling. And Edison looks at this thing, and suddenly he makes the unexpected connection. He says, wow, if sound can actually create a shape on the water, what if I froze that shape in some way and then reversed the process? Could I, in fact, record and replay sound? And he does that, and this unexpected connection, boom, right, creates every PDA, every cell phone, every movie, every radio station, every television station you ever listen to is the result of Thomas Edison's unexpected connection. Amazing, amazing. And there are so many. Bill Bower, it doesn't have to be in science. Bill Bowerman makes the unexpected connection between a tennis shoe and a waffle iron that his wife has. And he puts them together, and he makes Nike the most successful shoe company in history. Unexpected connection. Boom! Unexpected connection. So what does that have to do with all of this stuff? Well, I'd like to tell you 2 quick stories that talk about unexpected connections and how they work. First one is about a fellow by the name of Dr. Venkataswamy. They call him Dr. V. Some of you may know who he is. He is an Indian ophthalmologist, he was. And in 1976, as a 59-year-old person, he started getting arthritis. You probably can see it in the pictures in his hands, and he wasn't able to do ophthalmological surgery anymore. And he looked around, and he realized that in India, one of the scourges of India at the time was that hundreds of thousands, we're not talking about thousands, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people were needlessly blind because they suffered from cataracts. And you all know that if you have cataracts, that's one of the most successful kinds of surgery we have. You have cataracts, do the surgery, boom, you can see, right? In India, the problem wasn't the surgery. The problem was hundreds of thousands of people. How do you service that? How do you do that? How do you figure it out? Well, as it turns out, Venkataswamy was a chess fan. And one day he's watching a chess tournament, and he sees a chess master playing 12 games of chess simultaneously. Boom! Unexpected connection. If a chess master can play 12 games of chess simultaneously, why can't I make 12 ophthalmological operations simultaneously? And everybody said, he's crazy. Can't do it. Can't do it. He says, I'm going to the United States. I'm going to go to the place where they know about mass production. And he goes here, and he discovers, yeah, there's a lot of mass production. But guess what? These are made out of metal. I need something that's made more like people. And so he searches, he finally finds a campus in Ohio in the United States, and it is the campus of McDonald's Hamburger University. Who is better, right, at mass production of meat, flesh, than McDonald's? And he takes the lessons learned from there, and he creates an entire infrastructure in which, remember that previous picture of the car assembly line, in which, doesn't it look the same? You've got 12 people in the same room, patients rolled in, rolled out. And over the course of about 15 years, this man virtually eradicates needless blindness in India. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Today, the Aravind Institute or Aravind organization, 2.5 million annual outpatient visits, 300,000 annual cataract surgeries. It's probably one of the most respected eye clinics in the world. People from all over go to India now. And cataract blindness virtually gone in India. And 2/3 of the people who are treated for free, because 1/3 of the people who are treated pay. So he breaks rule after rule after rule. Lots of people in the same surgery. Some people pay, some people don't pay. But in the process, he changes the world because of that unexpected connection between a master chess player and ophthalmological surgery. It's interesting, you know, you look at that and you say, geez, that's impossible, can't be done. An amazing thing about possibility. You know the game of bocce, most of the people in Europe do, in the States not. Boule, bocce, pétanque. One of the amazing things about that game is that unless you suspend the laws of physics, you cannot hit the target ball. You never get a perfect bullseye because your ball's going to roll away from the target or it's going to knock the target away. So you cannot hit the target in bocce. But without the target, there's no game. So all of us should have impossible targets. Which brings me to the next story. Story of two men, Ralph Hotchkiss and George Langler. I met both of them when I went to school in Ohio years ago, 1965, thereabouts. I went to a school called Oberlin. Oberlin is a small liberal arts school, and one of the things that makes it unique is that about a third of the school is a music school, a conservatory. It's important to the story. One of the great things about Oberlin is that as a student, you could go to 6 concerts a day if you wanted to. It was really cool. It was a wonderful place to be. Many years later, not too many years ago, I went to a reunion of Oberlin. And one of the things that we did, and those of you who have experienced this, is we sat at round tables, had a dinner, and we celebrated some of the people who had made our lives different. And one of those people was George Langler. And everybody had a George Langler story, including me. But the guy who had the best George Langler story was Ralph Hotchkiss. I remember Ralph from when we were at school. He was a crazy engineering type of guy. He built bicycles of various kinds, and you would see Ralph running around campus, or I should say riding around campus on these different bikes that he had built, 2 stories high, reclining bikes. He was an amazing, amazing guy. In the summer of his 2nd or 3rd year, Ralph had a terrible motorcycle accident, and he lost the use of the lower half of his body. He survived, and about 9 months later, he wanted to go back to school, and he thought, Oberlin, school of 2,500 people, mid-60s, no accommodation for people with physical disabilities. He had a wheelchair. So he didn't even bother. He went to some of the major state schools in the United States, big, wealthy schools, and he applied, and every single school said to him, Ralph, we'd love to have you, but we have no way of accommodating people with physical disabilities like yours. As it turned out, his sister, Ralph's sister, went to Oberlin as well, and she said, Ralph, phone up. What do you have to lose? Ralph phones up, and he gets, on the other end of the phone, Dean George Langler. And Langler says, Ralph, I've been waiting for you to call. After all, we move pianos in and out of buildings all the time. I wonder if we couldn't adapt some of our portable piano ramps for your needs. Let me get back to you, he says. Ralph calls back a little bit later, or Langler calls back, and he says, Ralph, welcome back to Oberlin. He made this unexpected connection between moving pianos and moving people, and because he made that unexpected connection, Ralph was able to continue school. But the story doesn't end there, because those of you who are old enough may remember what wheelchairs used to look like. And probably in some of the emerge rooms that you have, they still do, or at airports you've seen wheelchairs like that. But wheelchairs don't look like that today, do they? No, wheelchairs look like this. And every single wheelchair that you see that looks like this was made after a design that was created by Ralph Hotchkiss. Would have been impossible if George Langler hadn't made the unexpected connection between moving pianos and moving people. But the story doesn't end there, because Ralph realized that the problem with wheelchairs, whether they look like this or not, is that they're great for countries where there are nice paved roads. But what about in third world countries where there's grass, where there's gravel, where there's mud, where there's snow? That thing doesn't work at all. So Ralph created a company called Whirlwind Wheelchairs. And this company creates wheelchairs for the third world, which go up and down stairs, which can go in grass and snow and mud, which can be lifted up with one hand, and which can be repaired with a single tool. None of that would have been possible if George Langler hadn't made the unexpected connection between moving pianos and moving people. That's powerful stuff, isn't it? So George Langler, you, me, What's our power? Do you have a lot of power? Most of us don't. Our power is limited. But our influence is absolutely incalculable. Our influence is totally and absolutely incalculable. Unexpected connection between moving pianos and moving people. Whoops. Not sure what happened there. Am I out of time? No. I don't think so. Can we go back to that slide? Hello? There we go. So, one final thing. This is a cartoon that was given to me by a mentor of mine. His name was Sid Parnes. And I love this because it's all about the stuff that we've been talking about. It's all about your material. It's all about every speaker who's been here. And you can see that there's this cartoon. I wish that, I don't even know who did it, because when I got it, it didn't have a name on it. But thank you, whoever you are. Because you've got these two guys strapped hand and foot in a dungeon. And one turns to the other and says, now here's my plan. So the productive thinking attitude, the innovative attitude, the creative attitude says what? It says there's nothing that can get in the way. There's always a way to get better. There's always a way out. There's always a way through. Now here's my plan. And here's the really, really weird thing. The magic of creativity is that when you look forward, things seem impossible. Could we ever have eradicated blindness in India? Could we ever have eradicated smallpox? Could we ever have imagined the role of women in our society today? Could we ever have imagined how we... Could we ever have imagined how people react to cigarettes today? Like from the back, it looks impossible. Thank you.
Thank you.
But from the front, it's inevitable.
It is. And the inevitable is that I'm kicking you off the stage now. Thank you very much. Tim Hurson.